Hello and good evening. I am Jamie Buckland with the West Virginia Few Families United for Education. And there has been some confusion since I put out the WVSSAC, which stands for West Virginia Secondary Schools Association, I think. Sometimes get that wrong. I put that out on Thursday, and there has been some confusion about the interpretation of the code. In the update, I had spoken with Bernie earlier that day. I had spoken with House Education Counsel from the legislature, Melissa White, to ensure that what I put out made sense. And actually going to, okay, it says my internet is picking up. I hope it's working. I'm on the wrong internet. Always on the wrong internet, but hopefully it's working. In that update, I had spoken to both Bernie and to Melissa White regarding the interpretation that has been in place with the SSAC since the bill that I worked on, House Bill 3127 from back in 2020, it was interpreted July of 2020 in the middle of COVID and the chaos. And then we worked together, the Department of Education, the WVSSAC, and me. I was the legislative liaison for REACH at that time. We worked together on the implementation. When the bill was passed, there was some question about the Stanine and being the fourth Stanine being accepted, whether it was the mean, the average of the subjects, or if it was the average in each subject. And for those of you who love grammar as much as I do, hopefully this will make sense. But there was some question at that time after the SSAC interpreted it on if it was interpreted accurately, because they were not accepting the average of, they were accepting the average in each of the subjects. And we had conversations at that time, and the legal counsel at that time at the legislature said that that was the way it was intended. That interpretation was correct. And the SSAC for the last 3 years has been accepting or deeming eligible students whose average result in math, you've got like math computation. I can't remember the different categories when they're assessing, but the average of all of those in math, the average of spelling and the different components that make up your reading and your language arts, in each subject, the result needs to be within or above the fourth Stanine in order to be accepted. And that's how it has been done for 3 years. This was a conversation that we had summer of 2020. So I spoke again with Bernie Dolan and with Melissa White before my update went out on Thursday. And I also put a disclosure in that update that said there is an effort to change that, which I'm definitely in support of. And if that effort is successful, then I will update the guidance that we give and the information that we provide. I believe Kathy Krause is heading up that effort. And again, I am for the average of the 5 subjects being accepted. But when I look at the difference in the language from the Homeschool Code, the Hope Scholarship Code, on what is acceptable to demonstrate progress for that exemption, it is different than the language used for meeting the academic eligibility piece for the WVSSAC. I'm going to switch internets. No, it's still going. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So the code is different, the language is different. To satisfy your exemption, you get to use the average of the 5 subjects. And the code says it is within or above the fourth Stanine. It's singular. It says the mean the results is in the possessive because it's of the results. It's like saying that the mean of all of those results is, again, in the singular, is within or above the fourth Stanine. It says that in the Hope Scholarship Code and in the Homeschool Code. In the Sports Access Code, it's in the plural. The results are in each of the 5 subjects, or all of the subjects, in all of the subjects. So it's different. I can't read that and say that the WVSSAC is wrong in their interpretation of the code because of the grammar. So there's that. Number 2. No, I've already covered that. So the language of the bill, it's different in the codes. This is to meet academic eligibility. It's not satisfying the exemption. So it makes sense that it would be different. Just like a public school student isn't just automatically eligible, they have to maintain their 2.0 and other requirements. That's the academic piece. For SSAC, homeschool, or Hope Scholarship, or Learning Pod, or micro school, it's saying that this is the academic piece. So here's where we get into 2 things. One, this is why we needed to pass Amendment 4 back in November. I had a lot of people ask me why I was for that amendment on the ballot, and this was the example that I gave. If we wanted the average of their test, the single average or the mean or the composite, if we wanted that to be what was accepted, meaning that they could possibly do poorly in math but do really well in science, and then that one average is what was accepted. If we wanted that, we could have, if the excuse me, if the administrative code or these legislative rules went back to the legislature for review, we could have worked on that and had some type of say. But because we don't have any say, they don't go back to legislative review. Whatever the Board of Education passes that's been submitted to them from the WVSSAC, whatever they vote on and pass in July, it becomes code. It's the administrative code. So if the efforts come back up to pass that amendment to send Department of Education, Board of Education rules back to the legislature, again, this is why, so that they can have eyes on them. So there's that point. In order for us, the West Virginia few, to be able to say, the SSAC is accepting an average of the 5 subjects, 2 things need to either happen. Either the SSAC's board says, okay, now we have discussed it and we are going to accept the average of the 5 subjects, or it needs to be changed in the code and they'll be forced to change their interpretation, or forced to be compliant with the code. But something has to change right now. And for the last 3 years, it has been in each subject. So my guidance is not misinformed. It is accurate. It is up to date. This is where we are. So if you're disregarding the information that I'm putting out about testing, that's going to be unfortunate, because unless one of those 2 things happen, then the child will not be eligible. when I challenged that in 2020, I was told that if a family felt like their average should be accepted, they could file an appeal of the decision for the denial, and we could follow through that process. I've pitched that to families over the last 3 years, and we've not had anyone choose to do that. So that is the current process. Again, I'm for it. And I want to, before I hop off, I want to give you the reasons why I am for them changing that. And I typed these out in a comment on Facebook the other day. So I'm going to present them to you here. Students in school are able to perform below average in a subject and above average in another, right? Like they could do poorly in one subject, do well in another. And as long as they have a 2.0 GPA, then they've met the academic requirement. Whereas our students, don't have that. They have multiple students in public school have multiple attempts to work on their grades and their scores to maintain their eligibility, right? They've got assignments that are due. They've got quizzes, depending on how their teachers weight their grades. They can work on that eligibility to earn it and to maintain it. They also have subjective teachers as part of the authority determining their GPA. Look, like we all know this, right? There are teachers out there that say, okay, well, do all this extra credit, or he's an athlete, I hate to penalize him, whatever. Like that happens, right? Just as a homeschool parent can't just, recently we had an issue with Hope Scholarship. A parent can't just say, yes, my child scored within or above the fourth Stanine and submit like an affidavit, if you will, or a document that hasn't been reviewed by a third party when the results haven't been reviewed by a third party. Just as we want accountability to make sure parents are honest about their child's progress, then teachers, are also a subjective authority on this. So and in addition to that, students with special needs have courses adapted, or they have accommodations. Students with IEPs are maybe taking different classes, depending on what they need academically. They may not be in the same rigorous class as someone else. It might be what is best suited for them, as it should be, but they're not penalized. So let's look at what the homeschool student has to do, or the Hope Scholarship student. They have one chance for the entire year. They have one test to take. And that must be above average in each subject. So they can't do poorly in math and knock it out of the park with social studies. They've got to hit within or above the fourth Stanine in each of those 5 subjects. They have a standardized assessment as the authority. So it is there's not a teacher, there's not extra credit to help bring up a grade. There is a standardized assessment. Imagine in the school if only students who tested well earned their eligibility. We wouldn't see it. We just simply would not see it. Students with special needs, with learning disability differences, there isn't an exception made for them. There aren't any accommodations made for them. It is specifically for those who test. So I hope that this is helpful to see. This is not something, somebody sent me a message and said that it was my interpretation, which is kind of ironic considering like how much effort I put in to this work. The whole reason that update didn't go out until it did was because I was talking with not one, not two, not three, 4 different attorneys before I put out that update. So it's not like I'm willy-nilly putting my own subjective opinion into this. This is the effort of years working with the Department of Education and the WVSSAC. I also want to say that this is a collaborative effort. You will never see me disparage the public school system. Some of the hardest working, utmost integrity, amazing people are working in the public school system. Bernie Dolan and I, he's retiring soon. we have been able to agree and see eye to eye on nearly every single case. Quite honestly, I don't think there's been a case that we've disagreed on. And so, what has been fair in interpretation has been what we've done. There was a case early on with a friend of mine. She's not on Facebook, but well, she became my friend out of Marion County or Mon County, where I had to really advocate for that kid. He was being told by the county that he wasn't eligible, and I believed he was eligible. And I was like a dog with a bone. I mean, I just would not let it go. And the kid was eligible and went on. I think they won a state championship. Like as a freshman, he went in and it was part of a state championship. But I just trust that I'm not out here giving you willy-nilly information. There's a lot that goes into this. Again, I'm for the change. I think it should be the average accepted, but the grammar in the code, I personally do not think says that. I interpret it as it needs to be the result in each subject. Um, and so I'm not saying that that means I'm right or I had some type of authority. I'm saying I don't see where the SSAC misinterpreted, and I don't see where the council at the legislature misinterpreted in that. Does it need to be changed? Yes, I think it needs to be changed. And I think kids should be allowed to play. But I don't think there's space for an accusation against them. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'll have another update that will come out in July after the Board of Education has met. I think they're scheduled to meet July 12th, maybe. Public comments can be made through tomorrow. So my update included some language for public comments, and those can be made through tomorrow. Again, as I said the other day, not a lot of time to give individual guidance right now. So if you're looking for specific help, just know that's going to be really hard for me right now. I'm juggling way too much. So, but I'm staying tuned on this, and I will put out the updates. So if you're subscribed to our updates, you will get them. That's all I've got. Went over 15 minutes. I was trying to keep it. It was lengthy, but I was trying to keep it within the 15 minutes. Again, this is a great reason for the Fourth Amendment. So if that ever comes back up on the ballot, this is why we want the legislature to have an eye on policy, and it should be able to go back through that. I think I covered everything. If you guys have questions, you know where to find me. Have a great evening.